Giaguiva Gwinushla, August Fall Youghal and Walla around Okach Bashilta Shaw. Good evening, everybody. Are we in good form? Well, you're very welcome indeed to the Malhouse for the second night of our special show. And can I just give a quick word? Last night was a fantastic success. The cast were brilliant, the audience laughed and cheered and they gave a standing ovation, and that was just for me coming out in my new suit. So there you are, we had a fantastic first night and we're going to have the same tonight, aren't we, ladies and gentlemen? We certainly are indeed. We're all looking forward to it. Now, just a little bit of background for you. Robert Emmets' Epitaph is written by our local man, Reg Keating, who has cast his magic spell and woven together the stories and the lives of characters taken from the faded pages of Irish history. Now, some of these characters you will know, or ladies and gentlemen, you think you'll know and recognise. Others you will get to know during the course of the evening. And all will be brought to life in a vibrant and colourful manner, played by the very talented cast and crew of the All Little Theatre, led by our wonderful director, Jim Morey, who is also the moderator in the show. So you can expect an informative, a very entertaining, and may I say, a surprising show. And all that remains for me to say is to sit back and now, as we go to visit a very famous courthouse in Dublin, to meet Robert Emmett and friends. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the show. The court will shortly be in session.
Citizens of the Irish Republic, you are very welcome here tonight to this historic court inquiry. Behind these curtains is Green Street Courthouse, built in 1797. That was just 1 year before the great 1798 rebellion, and 6 years before the trial of Robert Emmet. Now, I can tell you this court hasn't changed much. The flags, well, the tricolour has replaced the Union Jack, and the crown has been replaced by the harp. Now, the trial of Robert Emmet, that really was something else. It was the most renowned play of its era. Now, being from the affluent Protestant ascendancy, they would be making an example of Mr. Emmet. He would be charged and tried for treason, high treason. Now, in 1803, that was not just a capital offence, that was a hanging and beheading offence. Now, obtaining evidence that to prove his guilt was not going to be easy. There wasn't any evidence that he was found in possession of any weapons, and it was well over a month before he was found on the south side of Dublin in Harold's Cross. Also, there wasn't any evidence that he was in Dublin or even in Ireland on the day of the rebellion. Now, the speech from the dock. For all of 20 minutes, the people were spellbound. You could hear a pin
drop. When my country takes her place among the nations of the earth, then, and not till then, let my epitaph be written.
Then, and not till then. Now that was over 220 years ago. Isn't it time that his epitaph be written? And if so, what should be written? and who should write it. I have prepared individual files for each of our witnesses that contains pertinent, accurate, and important information. I have 8 memoirs in each file, and indeed I've prepared scripts to help me deal with each witness. Now, I don't know the answers they might give, but I know the answers I'm going to give, hopefully, and you will see. But anyway, 220 years ago, in this very same courtroom, Robert Emmett was sentenced to death. I'm going to ask him and bring him back to this courtroom here today to discover what he says about his own epitaph. Call Robert Emmett. That's not the script.
Then in Robert Emmett. On whose authority am I summoned back to this accursed courtroom?
On my authority.
From whom do you derive that authority?
I derive that authority from the citizens of Ireland.
The citizens of Ireland? Since when did the citizens of Ireland ever give any kind of authority to an Englishman?
My accent confuses you. I can assure you I am no Englishman. I was born to Irish parents here in Ireland. I spent my formative years in London, but I can tell you I'm as Irish as any man or woman here today.
Be that as it may, to what end do you call me forth?
Mr.
Is it
Emmett,
to put me on trial for that for which I have already paid with my life in 1803?
No, Mr. Emmett. Do you see any judges or do you see any prosecutors here? No, you do not. And do you see any jurors? No, there aren't any. You are summoned here today to participate in a court of public inquiry. There will not be any sentences, hanging, or retributions of any kind.
Very well, then. How do you plan to proceed?
Well, I inquire about the timing and fulfillment of your own request.
And what request might that be?
I read from my notes here your request to defer the writing of your epitaph until your country and mine, mark you, takes her place among the nations of the earth. After 220 years, is it not time, Mr. Emmett, that your epitaph be written?
Well, that depends. First, you'd have to define country.
Yes, I anticipated that requirement, and for that, I shall defer to your view and how you choose to define it.
Very well, then. Proceed.
Now, before going any further, as I mentioned earlier, I have here extracts from the records of your trial and execution, along with extracts from the records of some political leaders who came after you. Now, if I were Eamon Andrews, I'd be saying, this is your life. But I'm not Eamon Andrews, and this is not your life. However, this brief does contain details that will help me ascertain your epitaph when it should be written. And that is what I intend to find out before we leave this courtroom today. Now, shall we proceed?
Yes, please do.
Now, I need to establish some facts for the record. You are Robert Emmett, a Protestant born in Dublin on the 4th of March 1778 and executed by public hanging outside St. Catherine Church on Strum Street on the 20th of September 1803. You were just 25 years old, is that correct?
Yes.
Good. Now, you told the prosecuting counsel, I think that was Lord Norbury, in your speech from the dock, that there were men engaged with you who were your superiors. Can you tell me who were these men?
Certainly. They were Miles Byrne, James Hope, William McCabe, and Thomas Russell.
Yes, I thought that might be the 4 you would mention. But now, my dear Robert, do you mind me calling you Robert?
No, please do.
Right. You will surely realize, in hindsight, that you and your fellow leaders were all living in cloud cuckoo land. Your plans didn't have the faintest hope of success. What in heaven's name were you and your superiors hoping to achieve?
Well, we hoped to inspire a nation to rise up against its tyrannical overlord.
You hoped. You really did hope. There was some fat chance of that. The nation was sick to death with revolution. The people didn't want your rebellion.
The people were at rock bottom. And sometimes you have to hit rock bottom before you can rise up again. That's what gave rise to the French and Russian revolutions.
So, you hope to be a spark, a Clive Solace, the sword of light, like storming the Bastille of Dublin Castle. Well, the flame did not excite damp kindle of the oppressed, did it?
No, but it did smoulder away quietly underground.
Well, so much for that. Let's revert to your speech from the dock. I must say that certainly was inspiring. Over 20 minutes and 3,000 words. Perhaps you might once again step into that dock and treat us to a selection of your inspiring words.
Very well, you have me once again in this dock. Am I to be tried all over again?
Oh, no, you're not going to be tried. I mentioned it earlier. The inquiry asked 3 specific questions, Mr. Emmett. 1, is it now time, after 220 years, for your epitaph to be written? 2, what should be written? And 3, who should write it?
Very well, carry on.
Firstly, we must look at what happened in the immediate aftermath of the rebellion. You and a group of 16 men is fled to Rathfarnham. You had opportunities to escape to France, which you spurned. Now, please tell me why you didn't take those opportunities.
I was making arrangements to take my fiancée, Sarah Curran, with me.
But surely it would have been far simpler for you to escape to France and then arrange for her to follow you. You put her life in danger by remaining in Ireland.
No, I needed her with me.
May I say, you were a fool, a stupid fool. For you to escape to France, and the authorities were not looking for her, they knew nothing about her, they were looking for you.
I needed her support, her emotional support.
Oh my God, your needs. Your emotional needs took precedence over everything else. To that very dock you stated, my country is my idol. Yes. To it, I sacrifice every selfish, every endearing sentiment. You remember that?
Yes.
Your emotions change with the wind. In one breath, you needed Sarah Curran and emotional support. In the next breath, your country's your idol. If you pause for a moment, you could be faced with a choice between Sarah Curran and Ireland. How would you have dealt with that?
Well, thankfully, that dilemma did not confront me.
Well, that may be so, but the consequences of your actions did confront other people. Oh, it's true, you gave your life for the cause of independence, but while it was short, it was a life of privilege, comfort, and good health. And its ending was swift, neat, relatively painless at the end of a rope, but not so for others less fortunate who served you.
And who might they be?
Well, I speak particularly of Anne Devlin, your faithful housekeeper and faithful servant. She carried letters and messages back and forth between you and Sarah Curran.
Yes.
Now, she never betrayed you, though she endured years of imprisonment, torture, starvation, and ill health for you and your cause. Now, there is a heroine who stands head and shoulders above many we laud today as heroes of the past.
Yes, I agree. Anne Devlin was indeed faithful, loyal, and courageous, beyond the call of duty.
Well?
But how does this progress the writing of my epitaph?
Well, your epitaph, Mr. Emmett, is not emerging as a ray of light or dazzling glory. But it's not my task. Let's review your finest hour, or just the 20 minutes when you gave your speech from the dock. Could you repeat for me the final paragraph, and let's focus on its content?
Certainly. These were the words I spoke in my final paragraph. I have but one request at my departure from the world. It is the charity of its silence. Let no man write my epitaph, for as no man who knows my motives dares now to vindicate them, let not prejudice or ignorance asperse them. Let them and me rest in obscurity and peace. And let my name remain uninscribed until other times and other men can do justice to my character. When my country takes her place among the nations of the earth, then, and not till then, let my epitaph be written.
Yes, that was how you finished your speech. Now, for 220 years, you have had the charity of silence, as you put it. Now, who were those who knew your motives 220 years ago and dared not vindicate them? And what were the motives you spoke of?
My motives were, as you put so well earlier, to be the sword of light, a sacrificial lamb at the altar of liberty. You might say the gallows were my Calvary.
Yes, Mr. Emmett, but Christ didn't bring others to an early tomb with him.
Well, as you know by now, I was no Christ.
And who were the no men who knew your motives?
No man, indeed, for it was no man, but a woman. One person alone, Sarah Curran, knew my deepest motives.
Sarah Curran, indeed. You know, I'd like to meet this woman. Bailiff, would you please call in Sarah Curran?
Send in Sarah Curran. Sarah.
This is... I don't know if you've been meeting on the far side of the Great Mortal Divide or not.
There are no meetings on the far side. Relationships on this side remain on this side. Beyond that, I can tell you no more.
Get in.
Well, Sarah, good afternoon. Good evening, even. Well, Sarah, just for the record, you're Sarah Curran, born in Newmarket, County Cork in 1782, and you died in England on the 3rd of May, 1808. Is that correct?
Yes.
And when did you meet Robert Emmett?
We met briefly in 1799 at a ball in Wicklow. He was a college friend of my brother Richard.
And just when did your relationship with Robert begin?
Not until October 1802.
So, you only knew him for a total of 11 months.
Yes, that's correct.
May I ask you, were those 11 months a happy time for you?
We were rarely together for fear of my overbearing father, John Philpott Curran. Our meetings were brief and clandestine.
So how was the meeting, how was it conducted?
Through secret letters couriered between us by Anne Devlin.
And that's all?
Yes, apart from the all too few clandestine meetings.
My notes here indicate that you were betrothed. Is that correct?
Yes, we were pledged to each other, though not formally engaged. I didn't wear an engagement ring, but I had a small private locket which contained miniature portraits of both of us.
You said your clandestine meetings were for fear of your father. Why was that?
My father met Robert on one occasion and vehemently disapproved of him.
But my records show your father was a renowned orator and barrister, and he was famed for his defense of the United Irishmen.
He felt Robert was a brash hothead and upstart, most likely to get himself and others into serious trouble with the authorities.
Well, as events have shown, he was proven right. Now, coming back to your start of your life, you have told me that you were born in Newmarket, County Cork. My files tell me you were the youngest daughter and seventh child of Sarah Craig Curran. Can you tell me when your family moved to Dublin?
In 1790, we moved to the Priory in Rathfarnham.
1790s. So you'd have been just 8 years old. Were you a happy child?
Oh, most definitely not. My childhood was filled with unhappiness. My parents lived in constant disharmony. And it reached a crisis in 1795 when my mother became pregnant as a result of an illicit relationship. I was 13 years old and left without a mother.
Left without a mother. Just why were you left without a mother?
Because my father threw her out and forbade any of us to contact her. He then initiated legal proceedings against my mother's lover, which turned against him when his own litany of adulterous relationships was exposed.
Yes, I can see how your circumstances would lead to an unhappy life, Sarah. But I must now ask you about the rebellion. How much did you know about it before it started?
Oh, I knew nothing of the details. Robert said it was best for my safety. But I was surprised when it did start. I thought they were planning for a much later date.
Well, what were you expecting would happen?
Oh, I thought it was going to be a glorious rebellion, and that it would sweep the English back across the sea, and that Robert would be at the head of a new and benevolent government. He could then take me out of my miserable situation, and we could live happily ever after.
Like a fairy tale by the sounds of it.
Just like a fairy tale.
So the next question I have here is, how did you feel when it was all over?
I was devastated. I couldn't believe it. I went into a deep depression and was suicidal. Throughout the first 3 or 4 weeks, I received several letters and messages from Robert outlining plans for our escape to France. Our escape? I didn't want to go to France. In fact, I didn't want to go anywhere. I pleaded with him to go alone, but he just wouldn't agree. His dream of a liberated Ireland was over, and he just couldn't see it.
How did you feel when he was captured?
I didn't know he was captured. The letters stopped coming, and Devlin stopped coming. She and her family had been lodged in Kilmainham jail.
So when did you find out he was captured?
The first I knew of it was when a detachment of soldiers burst into my bedroom when I was in bed. They searched everywhere and found several letters. My father was away at the time, and when he returned, he was absolutely furious. He knew nothing of our relationship up to that point. He then threw me out of the house, and I found refuge in the Cooper Penrose estate in Cork.
I see. Just when was that?
Immediately after Robert's execution. I was devastated and in the throes of deep depression. My presence in the house infuriated him more and more each day. He believed his good name had been tarnished by my relationship with Robert.
So you could say that he, your father, threw you out when you were at your lowest ebb.
Yes, it didn't matter to him. He just wanted me out of his sight.
I'll wait for you to gather yourself. As you've told me earlier, you said you found refuge in Cork.
Yes, the Cooper Penrose family were Quakers and were sympathetic to people in distress. While there, I felt for the first time in my life that I could be at ease. They helped me through my mourning and depression.
My file tells me here that it was there that you met and married Robert Sturgeon, who was a captain in the Royal Staff Corps.
Yes, we were posted with his regiment to Sicily. And on a stormy sea journey back to England, I bore him a son. It was a very difficult birth. Sadly, my son John only lived for 3 weeks. My life was just one long litany of heartache and melancholy. The misfortunes of my life became too much for me, and I died a short time later.
Well, Sarah, it is quite obvious that you have suffered a great deal. You are free to go.
Thank you.
Now, Robert Emmett, a clearer picture emerges. You fed that poor vulnerable girl with dreams and illusions of a glorious revolution and a utopian state. She saw in you a knight in shining armor who would carry her off to a glorious sunset. But you wanted liberty from British rule. She wanted liberty from her overbearing father.
I didn't feed her with illusions. She merely interpreted my plans in that way.
And Robert, you didn't enlighten her. You were two deluded, love-struck kids floating on a dream. That was destined for disaster. Romeo and Juliet against a revolutionary backdrop. All that was missing was the joint suicide pact, a pathetic Roman tragedy.
But destiny was calling me. My country was calling me.
Oh, Robert. You were having a dream. I can hear your dream spinning round and round in my head from words from a different era. I had a dream. I had a dream that one day Ireland would be free from all tyranny and would cherish all her citizens equally.
Yes.
I had a dream that Catholic and Protestant children would play together in a garden of joy and happiness.
Yes.
And that all our people from every creed and from every denomination would dine together in the bountiful table of prosperity. I had a dream.
Yes. I did have that dream. And I earnestly hoped it would come true.
The only dream you had, Robert, was that any chance of coming true was your dream of martyrdom. And in that you did succeed. You made sure that by refusing to offer any defense at your trial.
That was a pact made with the prosecution in order to keep Sarah's name out of the proceedings.
Yes, Robert, but they wouldn't have had her name if you hadn't written a letter to her in your cell. That letter had her full name and address. Just how stupid could you be? You put her in mortal danger of being tried and convicted for treason.
Yes, that was a stupid mistake. So where does this leave my epitaph?
Well, Robert Emmett, your epitaph is an enigma. It lies somewhere between stupid bloody idiot and noble delinquent. Words like hero, inspirational, patriot, and even saintly have been used over the past 200 years. But I would say, Mr. Emmett, fool tops the list. However, it's not up to me. Let's call in our first person of fame and renown who may shed some light on the matter. Bailiff, could you please call Charles Stuart Parnell?
Send in Charles Stuart Parnell.
Would you like to stand or sit, or?
Sit.
You are Charles Stuart Parnell, is that correct?
Yes.
And you were born on the 27th of June, 1846, and you died on the 6th of October, 1891, is that correct?
Yes.
You were a Protestant landowner in County Wicklow. Avondale, I believe, was the name of the estate, is that correct?
Yes.
You were elected an MP in 1875 and had a good fortune to be leader of the Irish Parliamentary Party at a time when there was a hung parliament in Westminster. You did a Home Rule deal with Gladstone's Liberal Party, which failed to pass when, may I say, your adulterous affair with Catherine O'Shea was exposed in 1890.
I thought we were here to deal with the matter of Robert Emmett Epitaph.
Yes, that's correct. But your contribution must be weighed against any possible prejudices in your background.
I don't believe there are any.
You don't believe there are any. I shall tell you. Your renunciation of violence might be construed as prejudice.
My renunciation of violence was personal to me. It was a commitment I had to give in order to secure my release from Kilmainham jail, and not a comment on the use of violence by others.
Well, do you have a view on Robert Emmet's use of violence in 1803?
Yes. I thought it was a futile effort that cost lives and contributed nothing to the liberation of Ireland.
So that's what you thought. Well now, Mr. Parnell, for the benefit of the citizens of Ireland here tonight, I want you to explain something to me. You bore the honorary title of the uncrowned King of Ireland, is that so?
Yes, I did.
Your statue and monument dominate the prime position at the head of the principal street in our capital city, and that monument is the second tallest in the entire country. Is that also true?
Yes, I believe it is so.
You have streets and avenues named after you in every county in Ireland. Is that also true?
That is probably correct. I have never counted them.
Finally, for the citizens, which many of them would know, your funeral drew the biggest attendance of any funeral in Ireland, bar that of Michael Collins. If the Pope died and was buried here in Ireland, he would hardly command a bigger funeral. It's a wonder, Mr. Parnell, you weren't canonized.
Well, if you say so, then so be it.
Now, this is very important, because this is by comparison with you. By comparison with you, Mr. Emmett, who's here in the dock, as you can see, must be a minion of no consequence. He, by your words, has contributed nothing towards the liberation of Ireland.
It's you who has made this comparison.
Yes, and I wish to make further comparisons. Since you raised the matter of contribution towards the liberation of Ireland, I want to compare his contribution to yours.
Very well. My contribution is a matter of public record. It's there for all to see.
What I see is a pastiche of smoke and mirrors. Oh, there were a lot of very fine oratory drawing standing ovations. You brought discipline to the Irish Parliamentary Party and held a balance of power in Westminster. That's true. You had home rule in Ireland. You had it in the palm of your hand. And to uphold your pride, you threw it away.
Pride? I was never a proud man.
Oh, my God. You were never a proud man. There are none so blind as those that will not see. You were nothing if not a proud man. Your wife, Kitty O'Shea, attested to that in her biography of you.
You mean my wife, Catherine?
Yes, she was that for a mere 4 months before you died in her arms. But for 11 years before that, she was Kitty O'Shea, your adulterous lover. And that's how the world remembers her.
Kitty. She hated that name. In Victorian England, that was a term used for a prostitute.
Yes, and in Ireland it was a term of endearment. But look, I'm not here to condemn your extramarital relationship with Catherine O'Shea, but I must consider its consequences for Ireland. You see, unlike you, I have the privilege of reading Catherine's biography of you, written 25 years after you had died. It's a 398-page glowing account of the beautiful but tragic love story that you both shared.
There was nothing sordid in our affair. Catherine's marriage to Captain William O'Shea was all but dead in 1875. It was 5 years before I'd met her. They were living separate lives. Was she to be denied the right to love again?
Well, I, for one, would not deny that right. But I'm living in the 21st century, not Victorian England or Holy Catholic Ireland in the late 19th century.
Victorian England knew full well we were lovers. Catherine was my envoy to Gladstone during the Home Rule negotiations. He and the entire British cabinet knew we were lovers.
But the divorce in 1890 changed all that, and you knew it would. You knew the rules of the 11th commandment, thou shalt not get caught. Society didn't mind that what you did, so long as you didn't broadcast it. Liberal MPs wouldn't back the Home Rule Bill while you were leading its promotion through Parliament.
It was none of their business.
But maybe yes and maybe no. Gladstone pleaded with you. Gladstone pleaded with you to step down as leader of the Irish Parliamentary Party, just so long enough to allow the bill to go through. He told you that if you continued in that position, you were signing the death warrant for Home Rule. But you were stubborn, obstinate, arrogant man and refused to compromise.
The leadership of the party was a matter for the party alone, and not for some interfering Prime Minister who caught a sudden bout of piety.
But the Irish Parliamentary Party caught it too. You were denounced by the Catholic Church, and the country was split down the middle. So you see, your relationship with Catherine O'Shea did have consequences for the liberation of Ireland.
A man does not choose his own destiny. I had given to Ireland what was in me to give, but my private life belonged to no country but one woman.
Come, Mr. Parnell. Your affair with Catherine O'Shea was not a private affair to be packed away neatly in a box labelled private life. You were a very public figure. On your own admission, Victorian England knew full well you were lovers.
I had given my all for Ireland.
Yes, I know, and Catherine wrote that in your biography, along with an account of your persistent ill health. and the never-ending, grueling schedule you set for yourself. No one can say you were not a martyr to the cause of Ireland's liberty, but in the long run, it came to naught. So when I compare practical contribution towards the liberation of Ireland, you and Robert Emmett come up with the same tangible result. 0. There are, however, intangibles which must be weighed on a different scale. The scale is the measure of inspiration.
I could have done nothing more.
Not so, Mr. Parnell, not so, and this is very important, the crux of the matter. You could have smothered your pride when Gladstone and members of your own party asked you to step aside temporarily, but you didn't. If you had stepped aside, the Home Rule Bill would have passed, but the new temporary leader would have had the glory, wouldn't he? Your pride wouldn't allow that. The glory of achieving Home Rule belonged to you and no one else.
I had steered the bill to its conclusion. It was my bill!
I see. I see. Mr. Emmett, is there anything you wish to say to Mr. Parnell before we conclude his evidence?
I can only have admiration for a man who has given so much to his country and who has loved so completely and sincerely. However, I must temper that admiration with some disappointment at his lack of ambition. For had Parnell achieved his ambition of Home Rule, I have no doubt that Ireland would remain to this day a part of the United Kingdom.
Mr. Parnell, you said earlier that Robert's revolution was futile, cost lives and contributed nothing towards the liberation of Ireland. Do you still hold that view?
Yes. I have heard nothing that would influence me to change my mind.
Well, that being so, Mr. Parnell, we need not detain you any further. You are free to go, and thank you for your evidence. Okay, bailiff, my next witness is Catherine O'Shea.
Send in Catherine O'Shea.
Good evening, Catherine.
Good evening.
Just take a seat. Good afternoon, good evening, Catherine. You're here at the express wish of my colleague, Robert Emmett, whose epitaph we are considering. Perhaps you've heard of him.
Yes, I have heard of him. He'd been mentioned on occasion by my husband, Charles Stuart Parnell.
Thank you. Now, I need to establish some facts for myself and obviously the citizens. Let's establish a few facts before we proceed further. You are Catherine Parnell, born Catherine Wood on the 30th of January 1846, and previously known as Catherine O'Shea. Is that correct?
Yes. O'Shea was my previous married name.
And you died on the 5th of February 1921 in Littlehampton in Sussex. Is that correct?
Correct.
Your father was an Anglican vicar from a well-established family, and though he had excellent connections in society, you seem to be permanently poor.
Yes. We were always short of money.
And you were the youngest of 13 children. No wonder you were poor. And you had 6 surviving siblings. Through the generosity of some well-connected friends, you lived in a large house in Rivenhall with extensive gardens for a nominal rent. Have I got that right?
Yes, that's right.
I see. Rivenhall. That's somewhere near Essex, I think. Isn't that so?
Yes, correct.
It was first that you laid eyes on William O'Shea. You were 15 at the time and were smitten by him in his hussar's uniform, blue and white, it tells me here, with gold braid, a sword, helmet, and riding boots.
Yes. He really was handsome and dashing. I was totally taken by him.
But your father was not so impressed. He didn't think O'Shea was a suitable match for his daughter.
Neither did Willie's family. They disapproved of me. They thought he should be giving his attention to young ladies of greater means.
But you did eventually marry him. Or should I say, he did eventually marry you.
That would be more accurate. I didn't sweep him off his feet. He never loved me. Money was his motive.
Money? You just said your family were very poor.
Yes, but I had an aging Aunt Ben who'd acquired a vast amount of money, more than £100,000.
You're serious? £100,000? Today's terms, that would be 15 million or so.
It was quite a vast amount of money.
Yeah. She arranged to settle £100 euro.
On each of her nieces and nephews,
Yes.
whenever they chose to marry.
£100 was a nice little inducement to Willie.
Yes, that and the prospect of a handsome inheritance, whenever the old dear popped her clogs.
I see.
Meantime, my father had died, so his objection was out of the way.
You were married in 1867. You were just 21 and he was 27. By 1875, you were living separate lives. He left you with 3 children while he went off philandering in Spain and elsewhere, my record showed. At that time, you were left alone and destitute.
Yes, but my aging Aunt Ben came to my rescue. She bought a nice, comfortable house for me and my children and paid me to be her formal companion.
Very good. So you now have financial security. Then in 1890, Willie was elected the MP for Clare and came looking for your support. Is that
He asked
correct?
me to arrange dinner parties for him and his MP colleagues.
But you were still living separate lives.
Legally, I was still his wife.
And is that when you met Parnell?
Yes, I met him in the House of Commons. He was a tall, gaunt figure, thin and deadly pale. He looked at me smiling. His curiously burning eyes looked into mine. Threw my brain into sudden thought. This man is wonderful. He's different.
Yes, he was different. Was that when he started bombarding you with letters and notes? I've seen them in your book, Charles Stewart Parnell, Hidden Love Story and Political Life. Do you remember writing that book? You do. They are quite extraordinary. His first letter on the 17th of July, 1880, was addressed, Dear Mrs. O'Shea. By October of that year, he had written more than 20 letters to you. And they said, my own love, my darling love. By December of the same year, he was writing, my darling wife, and signing them, your own true husband. To that, at Willie O'Shea's own suggestion, this is what I can't understand, you were providing accommodation for him. Why was that?
Willie was currying favour with Charles for re-election to the next Parliament.
I see. And by the end of that year, you were frequently seen out together and tongues were beginning to wag. That culminated in him challenging Parnell to a duel. That was in January 1881. And how come that duel never took place?
Willie thought better of it. Why would he kill the goose that could lay him the golden egg? That and the chance of a handsome inheritance. Any whiff of scandal could blow that away. Aunt Ben had very Victorian ways.
But, Catherine, you could lay the same allegation at your feet. You chose not to initiate divorce proceedings to protect your slice of the same inheritance. Is that not the kettle calling the pot black?
I didn't want to cause a scandal.
You didn't want to cause a scandal. You were living openly as his lover for 11 years. He was one of the most high-profile men in England, and certainly the most high-profile man in Ireland. This whole thing doesn't add up. Why didn't you sue for divorce at the start of your relationship? My records show me there you had mountain of evidence, came through your book, of Willie's philandering and habitual adultery with prostitutes in France and Spain and London. You sat on that for 11 years and did nothing about it. And why? Because you feared losing your inheritance. And then this is the wife, husbandy, my queenie, your king's jargon, running through 200 letters exchanged with each other. Did you and Parnell, did you really believe, as you felt in your hearts, that you were husband and wife? That it was so in reality? The mind boggles. How such a brilliant mind that could steer Home Rule to within an ace of clearing the last hurdle at Westminster could get caught up in this Alice in Wonderland delusion about his own marital status. Now, if you don't mind me saying this, and I do this with all tenderness, your child, Claude Sophie. She was born on the 18th of February, 1882, and died soon after birth. It was Parnell's child. But Willie believed it was his. How could Willie believe it was his if you weren't intimate with him 9 months earlier? More sordid carry on, Catherine. The only bit of dignity about this whole affair was your decision not to contest the divorce. Parnell wanted your divorce to go through so you and he could be legally married. It would have been so much easier and simpler that if you had done that 11 years earlier, Catherine. Then Willie would not have free rein to blacken your name in the gutter press, and the kids would not be singing their bawdy songs about Kitty O'Shea.
I don't want to hear about them.
Nah, there's much you don't want to hear, like the value of home rule. How did you value home rule? Was it not worth more than your inheritance? For that was the value that you and Parnell unwittingly put on it.
Look, I've heard enough from you. People have heard you, and now I want them to hear me. On October 6th, 1891, Charles Stuart Parnell died in my arms, and the whole civilized world woke to laud or condemn the dead chief. They ranked him with the greatest heroes or the vilest sinners, for he had found and kept the haven of my arms without absolute disregard for the world's praise or blame. And so, I was until death, the only power greater than the love I held for him, tore him from my arms. And then the hate that followed him to the grave, it turned to vent on me its baffled spleen. For who knew a man such as he could keep the heart of the woman he loved as closely in debt as he did in life? He gave his life to his country, and he found the peace and comfort of that life in the heart of the woman he loved, whether in secret or before the whole world. That is how a man lived and loved, and that is how Parnell lived and loved. And because Parnell contravened certain social laws, and not consider them as binding in any way, and because I joined him in that contravention, we did not shrink or clamour at the upholders of those outraged laws, nor did we resent the consequences that were always inevitable and foreseen. His love made all else of no account to me. He gave his life to this country. He travelled in severe discomfort, failing health, along highways and byways, railways and stormy seas, all for the benefit of none but Ireland. And that sacrifice, Mr. Moderator, trumps all else.
Yes, Mrs. O'Shea, that does trump all else. Yes, perhaps it even trumps the willful loss of home rule. For that was the ultimate casualty in your whole sordid affair. But I have to acknowledge he was indeed the uncrowned King of Ireland, and you, the unjustly vilified woman. But that was then, and this is now. You never came to Ireland, not even to see his grave in Glasnevin Cemetery.
What? To be scorned and ridiculed? I've heard those skipping rhymes the children sing. 8 hours work, 8 hours play, 8 hours in bed with Kitty O'Shea. I had no desire to go to Dublin to be scorned and ridiculed.
Yes, I'm aware that in London in the 18th century, the term kitty referred to prostitute. But not so in Ireland. Here the name Kitty comes from the name Kathleen, and which is a revered old Irish name. It's a term of endearment. There are many Irish pubs around the world called Kitty O'Shea in your memory.
Well, that's something, I suppose. Do you have anything else you wish to ask me?
No. Catherine, you're free to go. Well, Robert, are you satisfied with that?
Well, her account does conflict in parts with Parnell's. Do we need to recall Parnell?
No, the conflicts are by way of interpretation. Not fact, I think Parnell genuinely believed there was nothing sordid in the affair. For such a brilliant intellect, he had an innate capacity for self-delusion. I think we should leave it at that.
Very well. So who do you have lined up next?
My next witness is Daniel O'Connell. Bailiff, could you please call Daniel O'Connell?
Send in Daniel O'Connell.
Before we begin, Mr. O'Connell,
Stop right there. I haven't been sworn in yet.
swearing in is not necessary. Every witness in this court of inquiry is a spirit, and therefore incapable of telling a lie.
That's not normal procedure. I have been senior counsel in every courtroom on these islands, and I tell you that's not normal procedure.
And I tell you, Mr. O'Connell, that having witnesses who are spirits in any courtroom is not normal procedure. So swearing in is not necessary.
I shall not give any evidence to this court unless I've been sworn in.
Good God, we got the right one here. Being sworn in. Good God, yes. This is the Bible.
Oh, well, at least it's a Jerusalem Bible, not that King James stuff. Are you not going to say the words of the oath you wish me to repeat?
Okay, Mr. O'Connell. Okay, place your right hand on the Bible and repeat after me. I swear by Almighty God
I swear by Almighty God
that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you. Do you wish to sit or stand, Mr. O'Connell?
I shall sit.
Now, may we proceed?
Of course.
You are Daniel O'Connell, born in Cass-IV in County Kerry on the 6th of August, 1776. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you died in Sardinia on the 15th of May, 1847. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
You are aware that this is a public inquiry into matters pertaining to Robert Emmets' epitaph.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
You are reported to have said, in my notes, that the 1803 insurrection in Dublin involved futile loss of life, and that Robert Emmet forfeited any claim to compassion. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that still your view?
Yes, it is.
You also condemned the 1798 rebellion. Is that true?
Yes, that's correct.
You said at another time that no political change was worth shedding a single drop of blood. Do you still hold that view?
Yes, I do.
Yet, you killed one man in a duel and were on your way to engage in a second duel when your arrest was prevented from taking place.
Look, I very much regretted that killing. And I later took a note repudiating all forms of violence.
Yes, Mr. O'Connell, we may come back to that later. Now, back to your early life. You were born into a wealthy Roman Catholic family who had succeeded in retaining land in penal times through Protestant trustees and the forbearance of Protestant neighbours. One might say that you were deeply indebted to the Protestants.
Well, of course, if we had Catholic emancipation, there would have been no need for that indebtedness.
I see. You married your third cousin in 1802. She bore for you 8 children, 4 boys and 4 girls. Before that, Mr. O'Connell, you had fathered several children with various young girls, and your philandering continued after your marriage with more illegitimate children. Mr. O'Connell, you are well known as a lazy, aggressive, reckless, and feckless adulterer.
I was a young man sowing wild oats.
Well, Mr. O'Connell, not so young. It lasted well into your mature years. Ellen Courtney, a young girl from Cork, gave birth to your son, Henry, and claimed in 1832 that she had been raped by you.
Nothing was ever proven.
Well then, Mr. O'Connell, we shall have to hear what Ellen Courtney has to say. Bailiff, summon Ellen Courtney.
I protest. Send in Ellen Courtney.
Welcome, Ellen. We need not detain you long. We are inquiring of the matter of Robert Emmet's epitaph, but that will not concern you. The item I wish to discuss with you concerns your relationship with this man, Daniel O'Connell.
Him? I wish to have nothing further to do with him. Just as I wish I had nothing to do with him in the first instance.
Well, the truth is, Ellen, he can do you no harm now.
Oh, well, he did enough of that when he was alive. After all, he's the man who got me pregnant against my will.
That's a lie. Mr. Moderator, you said that spirits can't lie. This just proves how wrong you can be. She's lying.
Mr. O'Connell, a lie is not about the words spoken or factually correct or otherwise. A lie is something that is told with intent to deceive. It's the intent that makes it a lie, not the accuracy or otherwise of the statement.
Look, I have been senior counsel in every court in this land for long enough to know the difference between truth and lies. It's a matter of law.
Have you ever heard of fake news?
What?
No, you haven't. That didn't exist in your time. Today, more than half the population of United States genuinely believe black is white. Are they all liars when they tell you that what they sincerely believe?
Don't be playing games with me. She's lying.
I am not. You are the father of our illegitimate son, Henry, which came about when you forced yourself upon me and got me pregnant against my will.
Please, understandable, but could you please just cool down a bit? Thank you. We can resolve this civilized way. Firstly, Ellen, let me get some details from you. You're Ellen Courtney, born in Cork in 1802. You moved to Dublin when you were just 15 years old. Is that correct?
Yes.
When you arrived, you called to Mr. O'Connell's house in Merrion Square to discuss the mortgage and a leasehold belonging to your father. Is that correct?
Yes.
My records show that you were uncomfortable in his presence and hoped that you would not have to see him again. However, some few weeks later, you received an urgent summons to return, and that was when you say he raped you.
I protest. That witness is not under oath. She can say anything she wishes.
Listen, I've already dealt with that issue, Mr. O'Connell, and I'm now looking for matters on which we can both agree. Do you accept that she called to your house on 2 occasions in 1817?
Yes.
And what do you say occurred on the second visit?
She made advances towards me.
And how did you respond?
Unfortunately, I succumbed to her seduction.
I see. And could that have resulted in the subsequent birth of your son, Henry? Could you speak up, Mr. O'Connell?
I said I suppose it could be a possibility.
A possibility? Who else could it be? For I had no relations with anyone else.
So then, Mr. O'Connell, why did you not accept responsibility for the child, Henry?
Because she accused me of rape. If she had dealt with the matter discreetly and without making accusations, I could have supported them both. But I couldn't do so when she was making false charges. I had a reputation to uphold.
Yes, you did have a reputation. So now the matter is becoming clearer. We are dealing with 2 different perspectives of the same incident, Ellen. I'm not in a position to adjudicate on those differences, but I do have enough to allow us to proceed with the Epitaph inquiry.
Well, I'm not satisfied. He is still yet to acknowledge that he has defiled me.
Well, Ellen, if it's any consolation, I can tell you that statutory rape, as we call it today, has been a crime on the statute books in one form or another since the time of Elizabeth I. As you were 15 years old at the time, you can rightly claim that your assault was an offence in law, and any defence of entrapment will not wash, as Mr. O'Connell well aware and knows only too well. So now, Ellen, thank you very much. You have been a very good witness. Thank you for your evidence. You are free to go.
Thank you.
Well, Robert, do you have any comment on the proceedings?
No, except to say that not for the first time in these proceedings, it has occurred to me you may have the wrong man in the dock.
Quite so, Robert, quite so. Now, Mr. O'Connell, at some point you obviously began to take, at some stage, take your Catholic religion seriously. Was that when you started your campaign in Catholic emancipation?
Yes, and I managed to get the Catholic Emancipation Act passed in 1829.
But the Catholic emancipation was a shallow victory. It allowed only rich Catholics enter Parliament while the poor tenants died of starvation. Isn't that true?
But it gave Irish people a voice in the Parliament in London.
But which was of no bloody use, as Parliament wouldn't listen. The grievances of the Irish were of no importance to them, as they amply demonstrated during the famine.
We switched over to have home rule,
Yes,
our own Parliament in Dublin.
that's true, yeah. So you were campaigning to repeal the Act of Union, to remain in the British Empire. Is that true? Mm-hmm. Mr. O'Connell, I must conclude that you are a hypocrite. You were not interested in Irish freedom or independence. You just wanted a Catholic state for the island of Ireland. That was the flip side of a Protestant state for the United Kingdom.
So,
You spread fear among 1 million Protestants in the northeast of Ireland, and you failed to understand the destructive force of fear. You had become a militant Catholic and a rabble-rouser.
and what was wrong with a Catholic Parliament for a Catholic people?
Your attitude, Mr. O'Connell, it's no wonder that we have had nearly 200 years of sectarian strife in Northern Ireland. That was the inevitable Protestant reaction to you. 1/5 of the population was Protestant, and what were you going to do with them?
They were free to practice their own religion without fear of hindrance or interference from the state.
Another contradiction, Mr. O'Connell, because when Dublin Corporation proposed establishing a non-denominational schools, you condemned them as godless colleges, as a danger to faith and morals. You were a militant youth devoid of faith and morals.
The people were behind me. They called me the liberator.
People always follow rabble-rousers. The people followed Hitler.
He espoused violence. I abhor it.
Yes, your abhorrence of violence rings very hollow, Mr. O'Connell. You constantly dabbled with fire, but took care not to burn your fingers. You incited your followers to hatred as a means of threatening Westminster. At your monster meeting in Tara, which you will recall, a crowd attended by 200,000. You told your audience they must choose between living as slaves or dying as free men.
My rallies were all...
No, not finished, Mr. O'Connell. What was that if not an incitement to violence? An early model for Hitler's Nuremberg rallies.
My rallies were always peaceful.
Yes, and when it came to your Clontarf meeting, where you were confronted by the militia, you were like the grand old Duke of York, who marched his men out to Clontarf and marched them home again. Just like Emmett, you dispersed at the sight of armed troops. But unlike Emmett, you didn't get your fingers burned.
I always acted in accordance with the law.
Yes, and after cancelling that meeting, you lost your most potent weapon, your ability to rally support for Home Rule.
Look, that was in 1843, and I had given over 40 years in the service of Ireland. The people lauded me for it.
Yes, you were lauded and praised and earned a shoulder high around the streets of Dublin. But that was an old saying that ends. You can't fool all of the people all of the time. It was Michael Collins who said, you were a follower, not a leader. You talked of national liberty, but did nothing to win it. Your aim never rose above establishing the Irish people as a Catholic community free to practice their faith.
Well, if he said that, then so be it.
He also said your heart was in Rome, but not in Ireland. And that's how it turned out to be. In accordance with your wishes, your heart is buried in the Irish College in Rome, while your body is buried in Glasnevin. I think that tells it all, Mr. O'Connell.
Yes, that's how I wanted it. My heart in Rome, my body in Ireland, and my soul in heaven.
Well, I think it's worth noting that your statue in the centre of Dublin has its back turned to the street that bears your name, the street where the torch of freedom was lit on Easter Monday, 1916.
I was not the sculptor.
Well, I don't think I have anything more to say. Robert might have some questions for you.
I have no questions for Mr. O'Connell. However, I must level the same criticism at him as I did at Parnell. Like Parnell, he too was blinded by the rather dim vision of Home Rule, while I, and later Pearse, dared to gaze upon a far brighter vision, that of an independent Ireland.
Okay. In that case, Mr. O'Connell, you are free to go.
Good day.
Well, Robert, it seems like we are encountering some difficulty getting a suitable epitaph here. Daniel O'Connell was not going to write an epitaph for you that was going to be favourable. Perhaps we should take a short recess, and things might look better when we resume.
Yes, perhaps a recess would be beneficial.
Okay. Bailiff, call a recess, please.
All right, this court is in recess and will resume in 15 minutes. All right, this court of inquiry is now in session.
Bailiff, can you please recall Robert Emmett?
Recall Robert Emmett.
Now, Robert, I am most anxious to find an eminent person to write your epitaph. I think perhaps our next witness might be just the person. Bailiff, could you call in P.H. Pierce?
Send in P.H. Pierce.
Would you prefer to sit or stand?
I'll stand.
Okay. You are P.H. Pierce, is that correct?
Yes.
What does the P.H. stand for?
Patrick Henry.
Should I call you Patrick?
I prefer Padraig.
I see. Padraig. Tells me here you prefer to be known by an Irish name. Were you christened Padraig?
No, I was christened Patrick. The Christian Brothers School in Westland Row enrolled me as Padraig.
Fine, now, Padraig, I need to establish some details before we begin. As you have just said, you are Padraig Pierce. Where and when were you born?
I was born on the 10th of November, 1879, in 27 Great Brunswick Street in central Dublin, south central Dublin. That is now known as Pierce Street.
Very good. That street was named after you, of course.
Yes, and my brother Willie, he was born there too, as were my two sisters, Margaret and Mary.
The records show that you were executed by firing squad in Kilmainham Jail on the 3rd of May, 1916. Is that correct?
Yes.
You were just 36 years old.
Yes.
Now, you said earlier that you were educated in the Christian Brothers School in Westland Row. Was that your first introduction to the Irish language?
Not really. My mother's aunt, Margaret Brady, was a frequent visitor to our house. She was a fluent Irish speaker, and she encouraged us to take an interest in all aspects of Irish culture. But of course, the Christian Brothers in Westland Row strongly reinforced that.
And your father, did he have a knowledge of Irish?
No, he was from Birmingham in England. My mother was his second wife. When his first wife died, he came to Ireland to set up a monumental sculpture business in Great Brunswick Street. We lived over the business premises.
Thank you. In 1900, my records show that you were awarded a BA in modern languages, and in 1901 you became a barrister at law. However, you argued very few cases, but the one which drew most attention was referred to as the name on the dray. Could you tell me and the citizens what that's all about?
It was an appeal against a fine for displaying an Irish name on a cart. We lost. The Court of King's Bench ruled that Irish was a foreign language.
Yes, a strange ruling indeed, but at that time there were conflicting reports about your personality, actually. One journalist said that you were the most intolerant man he had ever met, while your fellow student at King's Inn said you were popular and good-humoured. Could you tell the citizen which is it?
A bit of both, I suppose. I was obsessive about Irish culture. I suppose that could be seen as intolerant.
But at that time, you were deeply immersed in the Gaelic League, correct?
Yes. I believed that the Irish language was intrinsic to our identity as a nation. The language was disappearing, so I set up a new school to foster its learning.
That was St. Enda School.
Yes. First located in Ranelagh, but later I found the perfect venue for the school, the Hermitage in Rathfarnham. It was a splendidly located 18th century building, surrounded by parks and woodlands.
Yes, indeed, I know of it. But more significantly, as its near neighbour was the Priory, former home of John Philpott Curran. We met his daughter earlier on, Sarah. I think it's now time for you, Padraig Pearse, to have direct dialogue with my friend in the dock here, Robert Emmett.
Robert Emmett, my hero, my champion, my inspiration. What I wouldn't have given to have spoken to you while I was alive.
Please, Paul, you may do so now.
Thank you, Robert. I remember clearly as I walked the fields around the Hermitage, knowing that you and Sarah Curran had walked there before me. I wondered how great a failure your insurrection had been. No failure was ever more complete, more pathetic than yours. And yet, you left a prouder memory than Brian left at Clontarf. It was a memory of sacrifice, Christ-like imperfection. To me, your spirit called to a dreamer and awoke a man of action. It called to a student recluse and brought forth a leader of men. It called to a man who loved the ways of peace, and he became a revolutionary.
Yes, my insurrection was intended to be inspirational. You compliment me by saying that it inspired you.
I'd never intended to be a militant man. I had dreams of nurturing young children in the ways of Irish culture, to let their Irishness shine through the dark gloom of British oppression, to be free within themselves, although shackled by imperial bonds, and to endure, as did the exiled Israelite slaves in Babylon. But your spirit, which permeated the walls, woods, and fields of the Hermitage, soaked into my soul and transformed me.
Thank you for your kind words, Padraig.
Yes, Padraig, well said. You were a barrister and a school teacher. You had no training in military matters, yet you were the commander-in-chief of the volunteers in the 1916 Rising. Please tell me and the citizens how that came about.
Knowledge and skills are acquired along the way. In 1913, I attended the inaugural meeting of the Irish Volunteers. A month later, I was sworn into the Irish Republican Brotherhood, a secret body dedicated to the overthrow of British rule in Ireland. By 1915, I was on the IRB Supreme Council and on their secret military council, the core group that began planning the 1916 Rising.
Yes, but the question is, was the Rising really necessary? John Redmond, who replaced Parnell as leader of the Irish Parliamentary Party, had succeeded where Parnell had failed. The Home Rule Bill, as you know, had passed in 1914 and was on the British Parliament's statute book. It was just waiting for the war with Germany to end before being implemented.
Home rule, home rule, home rule. That's all that was heard throughout the 19th century. What good was that? Robert Emmett would have understood as I did that home rule was just a sop, a pacifier, crumbs from our British lords and masters while they retained control in Westminster. What would it allow us to do? Have our own currency? Our own military? Our own external affairs? No, not at all. It was just like today's devolved government. Westminster rules on all major matters and delegates the running of bus timetables and refuse collection to the local parliament. Is that what you call independence? What O'Connell and Parnell campaigned and fought for was just an illusion of liberty.
Hear, hear.
Yes, indeed. Ireland unfree will never be at peace. So you think O'Connell and Parnell were fools?
If they had any vision at all for Ireland, it was certainly much different than mine.
Yes, as I say, you said that at the grave of O'Donovan Rossa. You said Ireland unfree will never be at peace. And what did you mean by that?
After centuries of British jackboot tyranny, our suppressed nation was ready to explode. The spark was lit by that man there in that very dock. His inspirational speech would echo across the world and bring an empire to its knees. In America, it would resonate with Lincoln at Gettysburg, and it exploded into life in Dublin's O'Connell Street in 1916. A long threatening comes at last. Ireland, unfree, can be at peace no more.
But like Robert's rebellion in 1803, yours too was a disaster. It only lasted 5 days. Whose decision was it to surrender?
It was my decision, and it was my responsibility. Dublin was torn to shreds. The center of the city resembled the Gaza Strip in Palestine. The British had blasted everywhere and anything with cannon fire and incendiary bombs. Hundreds of civilians were maimed and slaughtered. There was no other option open to me.
Robert, would you have made the same choice?
Yes, I would. It was unconscionable that a supposedly civilized government would engage in such destruction and slaughter, and in one of its own cities. It showed their scant regard for Ireland and the Irish.
Thank you. You were executed on the 3rd of May, is that correct?
Yes, along with Thomas MacDonagh and Thomas Clark. James Connolly was the last to be executed on the 12th of May.
An important question. Do you think the Easter Rising in Dublin achieved its objective?
I do. Within 3 years, there was an appetite for real independence in Ireland. There was an awareness that the British had to be driven out by force. The British parliamentary election proved a sweeping success for the Sinn Féin party. Their members of parliament, however, refused to take their seats in Westminster and instead set up their own parliament in Ireland to be known as Dáil Éireann. The scene was set for the War of Independence.
Do you agree with that, Robert?
Yes, I do. I think it was a glorious time in Ireland's history. It was the culmination and vindication of 700 years of pain and struggle.
Thank you. Now, Padraig, you know the reason why we're here. And are you prepared to write an epitaph for this man, Robert?
Nothing will please me more. As I said, he's my hero, my champion, my inspiration. But I'm afraid it'll have to wait until we have a 32-county republic.
I feared that would be your position, Padraig. I thank you for your kind words, but most of all, I thank you for what you have done for Ireland.
Well, Padraig, you have been an excellent witness. As I have nothing further to say, you are free to go. Now, Robert, it seems you may have to wait a while longer for your epitaph. However, let's see what our next witness has to say. Bailiff, could you call Michael Collins?
Send in Michael Collins.
Would you prefer to stand or sit, Mr. Collins?
I'll stand.
Okay. For our citizens, you are Michael Collins from Woodfield, Sam's Cross, Clonakilty. Is that correct?
Yes.
You were born the youngest child of 8 on the 16th of October, 1890. You died from a gunshot wound on the 22nd of August 1922, is that correct?
Yes.
You died at Belnabla in West Cork. That's also near Clonakilty, is that so?
Closer to Bandon or Macroom, but not too far.
Yes. You have a museum house dedicated to you in Clonakilty. I've been there, I'm sure most of the citizens have been there. It's a delightful experience.
Yes, and it's in Emmets Square, named after that man in the dock. So that is something we have in common.
Mr. Collins, I do believe we have a lot more in common. He was hero worshipped. Excuse me pointing like that to you, Robert. He was hero worshipped by Padraig Pearse, a man you fought beside in the GPO in 1916.
Yes, and they were both bloody idiots and disastrous as military strategists. I hope you don't mind me saying so, Robert.
Not at all, Michael. You're entitled to your opinion. Equally, I am entitled to defend my actions. It doesn't surprise me that you regarded our rebellions, those of myself and Pearse, as failures. For while myself and Pearse were both idealists, you were very much the pragmatist in your life. And I expect you attributed little value to the inspiration that's won by our rebellions. I, however, feel that it was that inspiration that fueled the vehicle for Irish independence. However, we do share one thing in common, you, I, and Pearse, and that is our patriotism. On that, at least, I think we can agree.
We can.
You have done much for Ireland, and her citizens rightly hold you in high regard, as do I, and I am honoured by your presence here.
Thank you, Robert. Now, Michael, your interest in Irish history started in Lisavard National School. When you left school at 15, you took to the British service, civil service examination, and went to work in London.
Yes, that's right.
It was there that you met Sam Maguire, a famous Irish name, of football fame, and enrolled in the IRB. You returned to Ireland in 1916, shortly before the Easter Rising, and you joined the volunteers who fought with Pearse and Connolly in the GPO.
Yes, and after 5 days, it became apparent to me the stupidity and folly of our military tactics. That was no way to take on the British Empire. It was madness.
Yes, I'm sure you're right. Following the surrender, you and many volunteers from Dublin and other parts of the country were shipped off to a prisoner of war camp in Wales.
Yes, about 1,800 of us. The University of Revolution, we termed it. It was there I met other like-minded volunteers, and we planned out tactics for our next campaign against the British.
My records show that you were released in November 1916, and by 1919, you were the Adjutant General of the IRB and Director of Intelligence in the IRA. Mr. Collins, you were a busy man.
A lot of things were happening. As Pearse had predicted, people wanted change. Home rule was dead. People wanted full independence. In the 1918 general election, Sinn Féin swept the polls. We formed an overwhelming majority in Ireland.
True. You were elected MP for Cork South, but you didn't take your seat in Westminster. Why not? Well, Sinn Féin had 73 seats and could have held the balance of power in the British Parliament.
For what purpose? To go the same route as Redmond and Parnell? To achieve home rule? No. We would set up our own parliament in Dublin and stuff the British.
But you knew that wasn't going to wash in Westminster. They were bound to take action.
And they did. After the general election, arrest warrants were issued for all Sinn Féin MPs. However, I had foreknowledge of this due to my sources in Dublin Castle. Their information proved correct. But Dev and some other bloody idiots would not listen and were arrested. It took my team of volunteers to break Dev out of jail, and we sent him on a fundraising tour of America.
So, next question. When did the War of Independence start?
That was the 21st of January 1919. It lasted almost 2.5 years and cost the lives of 2,500
5,000 Irish people, 900 of them civilians. The intimidation by the Black and Tans destroyed whole towns. The centre of Cork City was razed to the ground. Looting, raping, pillaging and murder were their tools, and that culminated in the murder of 14 Irish civilians at Croke Park on Bloody Sunday.
So the war wasn't going well for you. Would you say that was true?
By the end, Britain had 50,000 troops in Ireland. We were exhausted. We had less than 3 weeks' supply of ammunition. We were a broken, spent force. When they looked for a ceasefire, we thought they were mad.
So why did they offer it?
Public opinion in England was swayed by the actions of the Black and Tans. Anglican bishops, the King, and Liberal and Labour MPs beseeched Lloyd George to put their actions to a halt.
I see. The Dáil was asked to send delegates to London to negotiate a truce. You had a disagreement with De Valera about that. Why so?
I had many disagreements with Dev. This one was because of the truce. A truce requires a military negotiation. Dev was not a military leader. However, he refused to let me go and went himself.
What other disagreements did you have with him?
We had plenty of disagreements. When he returned from his tour of America, things had changed. We were involved in guerrilla warfare. He thought that that presented a bad image of the Irish Republic because of how the British spun it. He expected us to fight and die like men and stand toe-to-toe with the British Empire. We told him that was madness. That was the same tactic that had failed every rebellion for the past 700 years. He was very offended by that.
Why?
Since he was made president of Sinn Féin in 1917, he felt he was God. He didn't want to be called Dev anymore. Oh no. He wanted to be known as Chief.
Would it be true to say that you didn't like Dev very much?
He wasn't the type of fella I'd go for a drink with.
He most probably the same thing about you.
He didn't drink.
Maybe that was the problem. But you did go to London for the treaty negotiations, and you didn't want to go at that time. Why? What changed your mind?
I didn't change my mind. It was totally different. A truce calls for military negotiations. We needed Dev as a political negotiator for the ceasefire. I begged and I pleaded with Dev to go, but he wouldn't. He sent me in his place. Oh, and I know now why. The cunning, sly bastard. He set me up.
Why do you say that?
From the minute I arrived in London, I was told by Lloyd George, it was Dominion status or nothing. Those were the terms that were implicit in the ceasefire. Dev knew that, of course, but he told no one.
But he kept quiet about it. That's what he kept quiet about it. Well, that's something. You're saying Dev knew from the start we were only going to get Dominion status.
Of course he did. Lloyd George and Winston Churchill said it to me in London. It was Dominion status or nothing, except that or face a return to war. War. They wanted a war, and Churchill wanted a war. And that's why they said it, and Dev knew that.
That Churchill man was very much implicated in all of it, wasn't he? Yes.
He wanted us because he felt that we had threatened the British Empire, and he was right.
I see. So how did it help him by going back to war?
It would show the world that you do not rebel against British rule.
So, Mr. Collins, would it be true to say that you were faced with this dilemma, to sign or not to sign? That was the question. How did you confront it?
On the 5th of December, 1921, Lloyd George said, It was immediate signature or immediate return to terrible and outright war. Churchill had 50,000 troops in Ireland. They were ready to commence firing at 9 a.m. the following morning. I could not commit my country to a war we could not win. The treaty was signed at 2:20 a.m. on the 6th of December 1921.
To me now, that sounds like coercion.
Of course it was coercion, but better a few lines of ink on paper than rivers of blood overflowing in Ireland.
Okay, but the effect of that little ink was enormous. In one fell swoop, the treaty overturned the Act of Union and granted the new Free State greater independence than had been enjoyed at any time for the past 700 years. It went far beyond Home Rule, which had been sought by O'Connell and Parnell. It's no wonder Churchill was hopping mad.
He wanted a war. He wanted any little excuse to have a war, have a victory, have anything. And a wipeout in Ireland would have suited him just fine.
Well, the treaty didn't go down well with die-hard Republicans, as you know. They were loath to accept Dominion status within the British Empire because it required signing an oath of allegiance to the king. De Valera objected to the treaty on the grounds that it had been signed without his consent and that it secured neither full independence nor Irish unity. How does Michael Collins answer that?
I struggle to come to terms with how stupid some people can be. Dominion status was an illusion, an image. It was an illusion that kept Churchill happy, and by the same token, it was an illusion that horrified die-hard Republicans. But within 5 years, we had got rid of the Oath of Allegiance, and a couple of decades later, we had passed the Republican of Ireland Act. There was no need for a single shot to be fired in anger.
So the Civil War was unnecessary.
Totally unnecessary. Dev took his followers out of Dáil Éireann and into a civil war because he could not countenance the fact that an upstart from West Cork had brought about the end of British rule in Ireland and removed British troops from Irish soil. It was personal.
It sure was. Well now, Mr. Upstart from West Cork, it also led to your untimely death at Baile-na-Bláth. Do you think that was a random shooting or an assassination?
It was an ambush, nothing surer. They knew where I was and they set out to get me.
Why did you go to Baile-na-Bláth?
I had heard that anti-treaty leaders were there. Dev, Tom Barry and Tom Hales were rumoured to be in the area, and I wanted to meet them. It was my homeland, and I felt safe there.
Big question, Mr. Collins. Do you think De Valera was responsible for your ambush?
No, I do not. There was a meeting held in Long's Bar, and Dev was present. The ambush was discussed, but Tom Barry and Tom Hales said he did not push for the ambush. However, DC also said he did not speak out against it.
That also smacks of collusion.
I'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
You became engaged to Kitty Kiernan on the day before you departed for the treaty negotiation. Isn't that so?
Kitty was very, very special to me.
Stories were going around that Harry Boland was a rival for her affection. Do you have any comment on that?
You'd have to ask Kitty about that.
Yes, I will. Finally, we must deal with the epitaph. Would you be prepared to write it, Robert Emmett?
I would, but you would not like what I would write.
What would you write?
Well, I said before that he was a bloody idiot, and I hold to that. I do not think that is what you want. Would you like that to be written, Robert?
Preferably not.
Okay. Mr. Collins, so you won't be asked to write the epitaph. I think that concludes my questions. Oh, by the way, I saw your bicycle in your museum in Clonakilty. I think it's still in working order.
My trusty steed, she carried me through many miles of dangerous territory. What I would give to have one last spin on her. Huh?
Well, thank you for your evidence, Mr. Collins. Get out of here, you rogue. Get out. Well, Robert, it looks like we're still in need of someone to write your epitaph. Now, do you have any thoughts who we may ask?
Maybe it shouldn't be someone involved in politics. Perhaps someone from the arts.
You might be right about that. Meantime, let's talk to Kitty Kiernan. Bailiff, call Kitty Kiernan.
Send in Kitty Kiernan.
I see. My file here says, I see. So you're Kitty Kiernan. They were right when they said they were beautiful. I can see why they portrayed you by Julia Roberts in the Michael Collins film.
Why, thank you.
Do you know why you're here?
Has it something to do with Robert Emmets' epitaph?
Oh, you've been eavesdropping, I hear. Now, before we get started, for the citizens, I need to establish some details for the record. You were born in Granard, County Longford on the 26th of January, 1892, and you died on the 24th of June, 1945, at just the age of 52.
Yes, that's correct.
You were in poor health for several years. The cause of death is recorded as cerebral hemorrhage. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, let me read my notes here, which I've made some annotations here. You're one of 7 children born to Peter and Bridget Kiernan, all girls except for the one boy, your brother Larry. All of your family suffered from hereditary Bright disease, and you all died relatively young. Your twin sisters, Elizabeth and Rose, died at age 18 in 1907. And both of your parents died within the following 2 years. Have I got that right?
Yes, that's right.
God, that was tragic. You were all orphaned in your mid to late teens in that case. Your parents had been running a number of successful businesses in Granard, including the Greville Arms Hotel. I know the Greville Arms Hotel and stayed there quite often. A grocery shop, a hardware store, a timber and undertaking business, and also a bar. How did you all cope?
Well, some of us were already working within the various businesses. I was recalled from boarding at Loretto Convent in Bray, but then my guardian sent me to St. Ita's in Rathfarnham.
Was that the school founded by Padraig Pearse?
Yes, that's right.
So you had an early introduction to Irish heritage and culture. Did you ever get to meet Pearse?
I saw him on occasions, but never met him. I saw Thomas MacDonagh more frequently. I think I blossomed in that school. I was the school captain and immersed myself in mythology, classical music, and the arts. It broadened my vision of the world.
So when did you meet Michael Collins?
That was in May 1917. He and some other Sinn Féin activists were staying at our hotel while they were canvassing for Joe McGuinness in the Westminster by-election.
Was that when you first met Harry Boland?
No, I met Harry about a year later when he came to Granard with Gearóid O'Sullivan, who was engaged to my sister Maud.
And what was that when your romance with Harry started?
Well, he certainly let his affectionate feelings for me be known. He would regularly arrive with a gift and a rose and refer to me in correspondence as the beat of his heart.
And how did you respond to that?
I was somewhat bemused. Harry was handsome and it was very flattering, but I had many previous boyfriends and I wasn't going to be swept off my feet.
So what did happen? Did it just peter out?
Well, sort of. Harry went on a fundraising trip to America with Dev, and he was gone for most of 2 years. He tried to keep it up by correspondence, which I rarely replied to. In the meantime, I was engaged to someone else, but that didn't deter him.
And when did your romance with Michael Collins begin?
Well, that was much later. Michael initially had an interest in my sister Helen, but after her betrothal in 1919 to a County Fermanagh solicitor, he gradually transferred his attention to me.
And how did you respond to that?
Oh, I was delighted. From the first moment I met him, I knew he was the one I wanted to be with, but I wasn't going to tell him that.
I see.
His interest was gradual, so I engaged in flirting, teasing, and playing hard to get. But he wasn't taking the bait. He was so masterful, confident, and great fun to be with.
Yes, I could see that. He was just sitting there where you were a while ago. But how did you finally reel him in?
Well, that was between August and October 1921, following Harry's short return from America. Harry wooed me, wined me, and dined me. Before he went back to America, he asked me to marry him and come and live with him in America. Because I didn't say a firm no, he went back to America, believing I had accepted. Shortly after, I had a letter from his mother congratulating me on my engagement to her son. And a little while later, I had a proposal and a beautiful solitaire diamond ring from Michael.
So you finally got your man. When did that happen?
That was on the 8th of October 1921, shortly before he left for the treaty negotiations in London. He proposed in a grand hotel in Greystones, and I accepted immediately. The hotel was subsequently renamed La Touche Hotel. Greystones was a special romantic place for us, and we planned to settle down there after we married.
How did Harry take the news of your engagement to Michael Collins?
Well, Michael and Harry were best friends for years. They were like two brothers. At first, Harry thought our engagement wouldn't last and that there was still hope for him. Then he wrote that no matter which way our love triangle worked out, he and Michael would always remain best friends.
My history notes tell me here that you made a letter-writing pact with Michael before he went to London, and that you would write to each other every day. Every day? How did that work out?
Well, we exchanged more than 300 letters over the following 8 months. All of them have been retained, and they have since been on permanent display at the Cork Public Museum.
Yes, I know. I've read many of them, and they revealed some insecurity in the early part of your correspondence. Why was that?
Well, I felt I had won the top prize, and I wasn't sure I deserved it. He could have any woman he wanted. I didn't want him to feel he was tied down. Well, he wasn't tied down. You couldn't tie a man like him down. But he had another mistress, and it was Ireland. I wrote and told him his first and best goes to Ireland. I was only a good second. He wrote back to me, assuring me I was his first real love. But I knew I was just first among humans. Still, that was something. Such a warm glow. It thrilled me and set my heart on fire.
Now, may I ask this question? Stories were doing the round, though, about him having an affair with Lady Hazel Lavery. How did you feel about that?
Oh, I don't know if there was any truth in those rumours, and I didn't care. She was the wife of the portrait painter, Sir John Lavery, who'd just done a magnificent portrait of him. It was a matter of no consequence.
Did you ask him about it?
No, I didn't, and don't you go asking him either.
Okay. Now, there was much conversation about him going to Mass and lighting candles. What was that all about?
Well, Michael had his differences with the Catholic Church. I was once told he threatened to shoot the Bishop of Cork for excommunicating a Sinn Féin activist. I was once told that he is supposed to have said, "There is no sense shooting uneducated idiots as spies and leaving people like that Bishop of Cork get away with it." I pleaded with him to cool down and rethink the whole matter. He did, and after that, his Catholic faith was a guiding light in everything he did.
So just to give the civilian a feeling of how close your relationship is, do you mind if I ask you, was the relationship consummated?
You mean, did we engage in intimate relations? Oh no. Michael and I accepted that that was reserved for the sanctity of marriage. The urge in both of us was strong, but we were able to resist it. That was the ruling of the Catholic faith.
So that probably ruled out his affair with Lady Hazel Lavery as well.
Yes, I expect you're right.
You wrote lovingly about the home life you hoped to share with him, and you both seemed to share your thoughts on everything. You were evolving into the ideal couple.
I never knew what soulmate meant until I met Michael.
Mr. Collins' death must have been a terrible shock. How did you cope with that?
Oh, please. It's painful to go there. We knew his life was in danger. I warned him he might get shot if he went to Arthur Griffith's funeral, but he went anyway. Then there was the death of Harry, his dear friend and mine. Harry turned against him when he went to fight for Dev's Republic. Republic! 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 Oh, how I hate that word! What is a republic? A democratic state without a monarchy? That word has cost lives throughout the centuries. Beware the Ides of March. 8 jealous senators leave the blood-soaked body of Julius Caesar on the steps of the Senate building. And for what? All because they wrongly believe he has threatened their precious republic. A2, Dev. You left Michael's body bathed in blood on the roadside at Bale-na-Blah, all because you thought he failed to deliver to you a republic. He didn't fail. What do you have now? A republic. A republic bought with Michael's blood and his signature on a treaty that got it for you. The right to achieve independence. Without his blood and his signature on that document, you would have no republic today. No state cars or ministerial pensions. Oh, Michael. Michael, my love. Beware the days of August, the 22nd of August, when my whole world died with you on that West Cork roadside, and the country lost its greatest hero. I'm sorry, Mr. Moderator, for getting so emotional. It's just that it's all coming back to me now.
Are you sure you can carry on?
It's okay. I should be over such things at this stage.
Well, I don't know. Well, if you are happy to go on, I'd like to ask you about your sister wedding, Garode O'Sullivan. That was to be a double wedding, which should have included you and Michael. Did Maud and Garode go ahead with their wedding?
Yes, they did, as planned, on the 18th of October, 1922.
And did you attend?
Yes, I did, reluctantly. Oh, it was a terrible affair, sitting in the body of the church, all in black, when I should have been at the altar, all in white with Michael. I felt I was attending his funeral all over again.
Well, as you know, his funeral was a massive affair. He lay in state for 3 days in St. Mary's Pro-Cathedral in Dublin. Tens of thousands of mourners filed past his coffin each day to pay their respects, including many who had fought against him. Over 500,000 people attended his funeral, including many foreign dignitaries. But you must have been numb through the whole event.
I was in a daze, and it took me years to come out of it.
But you did come through, and you did wear white at the altar.
Yes, on the 10th of October 1925, I married Felix Cronin. He was a veteran of the War of Independence and the Civil War, and a staunch supporter of Michael during both wars.
Why did you marry him? Did you love him?
Well, I thought I did at the time. I was 30 years old and needed to marry somebody. I wasn't cut out to be a spinster in my old age.
I see. I guess I should be asking Felix why he married you. If I did, what do you think he would say?
Well, I expect he'd say he wanted a pretty woman on his sleeve. I was still an attractive catch at the time.
I see. Well, can you tell the civilians and citizens, was it a happy marriage?
I can't say that it was. There were a lot of rows. Felix drank a lot, and there were money problems.
So it wasn't a happy marriage. But, may I say, Kitty, perhaps you contributed a lot to the problems by having a third person in the marriage.
What do you mean, a third person?
That person, I mean Michael Collins. You never let him go. My records show you were telling Felix every day that he was second best. You gave John Lavery's portrait of Michael pride of place on an easel in the center of your own living room. You had 2 sons, and you named your second son, wait for it, Michael Collins Cronin. Your home was a shrine to Michael Collins. It's no wonder Felix turned to drink.
Yes, you're right. I was not ready for marriage. I was a one-man woman.
Yes, and you had a very supportive husband. For several years, you were in and out of nursing homes suffering from nephritis. When you died suddenly of a cerebral hemorrhage on the 25th of July, 1945, he had you buried in Glasnevin Cemetery in a grave as close as possible to, guess who? Michael Collins. Collins.
Yes, he was a kind man.
Robert, I come to the end of my questions for Kitty Kiernan. Is there anything you want to ask her before she departs?
No, except to express my sympathy at the distress and suffering she must have felt at the loss of the man she loved.
I see. Okay, Robert, I have come to the end of my questions for Kitty Kiernan, as I said, and Kitty, you are free to go. Thank you very much. Well, Robert, we are coming to the end, and we have made little progress on when your epitaph should be written and who should write it. As to what should be written, I said earlier that fool tops the list. But after hearing the evidence, I believe that inspirational must now be the favourite, Robert. You were clearly the inspiration behind Pierce in 1916, and indeed an inspiration to none other than Abraham Lincoln. He memorized and regularly quoted your speech from the dock. That's some praise from a respected American president.
It was kind of him to do so, and kind of you to say so.
Indeed. Thank you. Now, but you still have not given me your definition. This is now, so get that back to Robert Emmett. We are happy to sign it in time. It appears I've forgotten to introduce the last person invited to contribute to your proceedings. I see. Call in Brendan Behan.
Send in Brendan Behan.
What do you mean? Leave me out there like a spare prick at a wake. Do you think I've nothing better to be doing? And listen, your hospitality is shite. I had to send out for this pint. And look, it's now gone flat. You'd think it has seen a ghost. Yeah. By the way, what's this all about?
Mr. Moderator, this man is drunk.
Oh, Jesus. Is that you, Robert? Huh? You in the dock again? What kind of shit did you get up to this time? You made a right dog's dinner of that last schmozzle you got up to. Remember, you were like the Grand Old Duke of York. Oh, the Grand Old Robert Emmett. He had about 80 men. He marched them up to Dublin Castle and he marched them down again.
Very good, Mr. Behan. Very good. Now, before we proceed further, I need some details for the record.
What are you, Mr. Bean me arse?
Oh,
if you can't call me Brendan, I'm fecking off out of here.
Okay, Brendan, but I do still need some details for the record. Ooh. We are engaged. Details? What details?
Yeah. What details? Yeah. Look it. I'm Brendan Bean. I'm a dub. And I'm dead. That's brown bed. And by the way, you still haven't told me what's this all about.
We are engaged in a public inquiry regarding the writing of Robert Emmett's epitaph. And to that end, we are soliciting opinions from people of fame and renown.
An epitaph? What the bloody hell use is an epitaph? You only get one of those when you're dead.
True.
Yeah. Just like proclamations and declarations and inscriptions and posthumous awards for this and that and the other. No bloody use to you. They'll never bring you back to life.
Yes, I know, you're perfectly correct. But epitaphs can be an inspiration for those who come after us.
Look, tell you, the only people who ever came after me were landlords, peelers, and the taxman. And they didn't need any inspiration.
Mr. Behan, you know that you came from a Republican family. Your uncle Padakani wrote the national anthem, and you, Mr. Behan, were an active member of the IRA.
Ah, look. Jeez. Jeez, if I wasn't already dead, that cough would kill me. You know. Yeah. I'll tell you, the score is like this. Active member of the IRA. Listen, I gave all of that up by the time I was 23. It was interfering with my drinking career.
Just so, now to get back to Robert Emmet's epitaph. We are trying to ascertain if it's yet time for it to be written. You are familiar, are you not, with his speech from the dock?
Ah, look, go teach your grandmother to suck eggs. Of course I'm familiar with his speech from the dock. It was right here. I'm a Republican, you know. You know that?
I know.
Yeah, it was right here in this very dock. What do you say, Robert? Have you any more speeches? Or will we adjourn around to the hacienda?
The hacienda?
Yeah. It's the nearest pub. It's just around the corner in Aaron Street.
Pubs were never really part of my scene, Brendan, so if you don't mind, I'll give it a skip. And no, there'll be no new speeches, no new proclamations or declarations. But I do have one big decision to make, and it's this. Does my country have 32 counties or 26 counties?
Well, that remains to be seen. And we are working on that now.
Excuse me! Good evening, madam. Excuse me!
Jesus.
It's Paisley.
I'll answer that question for you. Sure.
Did you invite him?
What's that? Paisley. Somebody come.
You have 26 counties. And not an inch more.
Really, Mr. Moderator, I must object. Are you going to allow this outrageous interruption to the proceedings?
How dare you enter this proceedings? This court is conducting a public inquiry, and only invitees are permitted to speak, Mr. Paisley.
Since when did any court prevent me from having my say? I'm not afraid to stand toe to toe with your Republican terrorists.
Look, Mr. Moderator, tell you what, have no fear about him. He's a harmless pussycat now, you know that? You know that? A harmless pussycat. Ever since that near-death experience that he had in, when is it? 2004, wasn't that it? Yeah, 2000. He got scared shitless. Scared shitless that he might have to face the wrath of God. Yeah. And his no surrender war cry would be no use to him outside the pearly gates.
Mr. Behan, pussycat
Yes.
or no pussycat, I can tell you what you got in that 1921 Anglo-Irish treaty is all you're ever going to get for it. You can wait till hell freezes over, but you won't get not one more inch. And all ye Republican ass-lickers will be disappointed to learn hell is not where I've come from.
Cool down, Enoch. Cool down. Who cares whether you came from heaven or from hell? And who's asking you for another inch? We're here to consider Robert Emmet's epitaph. There's no need to go getting your knickers in a twist.
You're not listening to me. I'll tell you again, not another inch.
Is that your epitaph? Or is it still no surrender?
My epitaph is The good shepherd lays down his life for his flock, and that's what I did for my flock.
Eno, you have no flock. Your flock at your funeral was just a handful of your immediate family. That's all.
Yes. Tragically, my flock abandoned me because I went into government with Sinn Féin. I believed that the Good Friday Agreement would bring peace to Northern Ireland. And I pay the price of rejection for my beliefs.
So then why all this not another inch stuff?
You can have peace with your neighbours without stealing from them.
Look, go tell that to your Scottish ancestors. They stole from our forefathers during the Ulster plantation. Sons and daughters of thieves and vagabonds. That's your Ulster heritage.
Now ease up, the two of you. As we all know, and all the citizens know, the Good Friday Agreement is in place, and we want to keep it that way. What would you like your epitaph to say, Robert?
Well, it's not really important anymore. What is important is what our country is today. I see her welcoming distressed migrants from all over the world. Migrants who relish the opportunity to immerse themselves in our traditions and culture. I see Ukrainian children speaking our language, and I see them playing our national games and learning Irish dancing. I see buildings illuminated in green all over the world on St. Patrick's Day, and our national parade is celebrated on a global scale. Against all of this, my epitaph is of no consequence.
I disagree, Robert. It's unfinished business. This inquiry is charged with bringing that business to a conclusion, as you know. We need an epitaph to represent your life. Now, can you repeat the closing paragraph of your speech from the dock?
Certainly. When my country takes her place among the nations of the earth, then...
Sorry, I'm going to stop you there. Further back than that, the piece about resting in obscurity.
Let them and me rest in obscurity and peace, and let my name remain uninscribed until other times and other men can do justice to my character.
You're true, yes. That is the phrase. Let them and me rest in obscurity and peace, and my name remain uninscribed. That was the charity of silence you sought, to rest in obscurity and peace. Well, you've had your obscurity and peace. Your final resting place is unknown. My records show me that I have found you are interred in Bully's Acre on the grounds of the Royal Kilmainham Hospital. Then the governor of the jail had you reinterred in a secret location, so your remains would not become a shrine for a further rebellion. And now nobody knows where your remains are.
Hey, what'd you say? Oh, Jesus, stop the lights, bunny car. Stop the lights. There can't be no epitaph. What a right shower of idiots here. There can't be no epitaph.
What do you mean there can be no epitaph?
Come on now, Mr. Moderator. Has any of you bothered to ask what an epitaph is? No, you haven't. No, you haven't. An epitaph is an inscription on a tombstone. Nothing more and nothing less. You can have inscriptions on plaques all over the place. You can have obituaries in newspapers and magazines and all that. But none of those can ever be an epitaph. It must be on a tombstone. Epitaph comes from two Greek words, epi and taphos, upon, and tomb. Did you know that, Robert?
Yes, of course.
So, Mr. Bean, You're saying there can be no epitaph?
Ah, come on,
This whole inquiry's been a waste of time.
wake up and smell the coffee. How can there be an epitaph? If you have no grave, you've no tombstone. And if you have no tombstone, you have no epitaph. Irish people have been talking about Robert Emmet's epitaph for 220 years. And not once did it dawn on them that there could be no epitaph. And I'll tell you the other thing, Mr. Moderator. See all these people out here?
I do.
Yeah. They came to hear what Robert Emmet's epitaph would be. And now they'll want their money back.
No.
And I'll tell you, you, Robert Emmett, you're a rascal and a rogue. You set this whole riddle up 220 years ago.
I didn't ask that my remains should go missing.
Oh, yes, you did, Robert. Oh, yes, you did. Let me remain in obscurity and peace. That was your last request, and that's what you got. Obscurity and peace. And what is obscurity but the state of being unknown? Your last resting place has remained unknown for 220 years. You're a blackguard. You were having the last laugh at us. You left us swirling around like a fart in a bucket. and nowhere at all.
I always knew ye papists were not to be trusted.
But I was not a papist. I was one of your lot, a Protestant. As were Wolfe Tone, Henry Joy McCracken, and Lord Edward Fitzgerald. They were all Protestants, and all members of a multi-denominational society that included Catholics, Protestants, Presbyterians, and all free-thinking Irish men and women of every persuasion who were true to the cause of Irish liberty. They were so very different to you and your Free Presbyterian Church. What a hypocritical name you choose, Free Presbyterian Church.
How dare you insult my church? How dare you, sir?
But you knew nothing of the meaning of the word free. What was I but an Irish Presbyterian who longed to be free? I wonder how your congregation would respond if I was to show up to one of your Sunday services.
I'm not standing here listening to this.
Ah, Eno, cool down. Come on, listen. I'll tell you what, Eno. Let's get out of here before he eats you alive without
No, I'm getting out.
Yeah, come on. Let's.
Gentlemen,
hold me there.
Gentlemen, we cannot leave it like this, and we will not leave it like this. We have come so far with the success of the Good Friday Agreement and all peace it has brought to this country. And indeed, we are the envy of many quarters in the world where people know of the Friday Agreement. Yes, in a lighter note, Brendan, you can go. But Brendan, before you go, would you give us a bar of the old triangle with Mr. Paisley, if you would?
Ah, Mr. Moderator, of course I will. But I'll tell you first, I want to give you a verse of the ballad of bold Robert Emmett. Ah, bold Robert Emmett, the darling of Erin. Bold Robert Emmett will die with a smile. Farewell, companions, both loyal and daring. I lay down my life for the Emerald Isle and the old triangle. They went jangle, jangle all along the banks of the Royal Canal. All along the banks of the Royal Canal.
Come on, let's get out of here. I'm not standing here listening to this man. Come on.
Well, Robert, you may go back across the Great Divide and enjoy your eternity. It appears we can't have an epitaph. However, we do have a tombstone we prepared for you. It is inscribed Robert Emmett, 1778. Here we go. Specially made for you. Robert Emmett, 1778 to 1803. An inspiration. For an inspiration is what you are. As for your mortal remains, wherever they are, may they rest in peace.
Send in Padraig Pearse. Send in Daniel O'Connell and Ellen Courtney. Send in Charles Stewart Parnell and Catherine Parnell. Send in Michael Collins and Kitty Kiernan. Send in Brendan Behan and Ian Paisley. Send in the moderator and his assistant. Send in Sarah Curran. And finally, send in Robert Emmett.
Came o'er me stealing, and the mice they were squealing round my prison cell, and the old triangle went jingle jangle all along the banks of the Royal Canal.
To begin the morning, the screws were bawling, "Get up, ya bowsy, and clean up your cell."
And the old triangle went jingle jangle all along the banks of the Royal Canal.
Up in the female prison, there are 75 women, and it is among them I wish I could dwell.
and the old triangle. When jingle jangle, all along the banks of the Royal Canal, all along the banks of the Royal Canal.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of another run, a fabulous run. I want to thank especially the people backstage as well. They've done a wonderful job. And thank our audiences and thank all our supporters and sponsors. But tonight couldn't go without a special mention to two people on stage. Jim, who had the envious job of bringing Reg's play to life. He really did a wonderful job with us all. He knocked us into shape and the whole lot. And of course, without Reg, we wouldn't have had the script. And Reg... Reg has written, this is the first play that Reg has had on stage, and it was a wonderful piece of work, and thank you, Reg, for that. A young author, only 84 years of age. Fair play to you. Well done. It just goes to prove that always never give up on your dreams. You can do it. Fair play, Reg. Well done. And fair play to Jimmy for having the vision to see that it could make a really good show, and he instilled that into all of us, and another great time for your little theatre. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Liam. None of you noticed, I hope, that when we went behind the curtains earlier, I couldn't find my wig. And I can assure you it is a wig. We got the colouring right thanks to some tea bags. No, thank you first of all for being here tonight. It's no good unless you have great audiences. We had a great audience last night, and you've been a great audience. You could hear a pin drop as one of the lines in the play. Yeah, it was a unique type of play written by this man. We've discussed it a lot over the last few years, and it's been modified and brought ready for your enjoyment. But I always thought the idea of it was very simple, but magical, right? Yeah, and what it was, and you deserve all the credit you can get. Now, from my personal point of view, this is where I usually get emotional because I'm talking about the staff, so I'll speak quickly. And they are a great team to work with. We have a unique, it's not unique, I suppose, that any working group that can achieve what we have as a group working together is purely magic. And because we all care about one another, we all have fun, and we're already looking to go into the water rally to celebrate. And yeah, that's my own personal view. And of course, I'm a special tribute to my wife, so that's when I usually get emotional, so I won't do that. So thank you once again. Thank you, Reg. Thank you, Liam, for being chairman of your little theatre, and Anthony doing a great job over there as the bailiff, making his first appearance on stage, right? This is, and what about this man? Michael Miller. Now, I don't know if any of you remember our last film, which was Lend Me a Tenor. Michael played opposite this man here. They were the two tenors. Well, yeah, you were, I suppose you were the good. But Michael is appearing in a play next month, isn't it? Yeah, The Beauty Queen of Lannan in Ardmore. So he's a very talented man in much demand, but I know he's more kind of leaning towards Ardmore because that's where you live, kind of, but we want you as our own, especially after that speech from the doc. Anyway, Sinead, take a step out. Yeah. Sinead O'Donoghue is probably, I would say, the powerhouse of the whole group, because she's just got such a great and wonderful attitude to help us all. She can't do enough, and what a tremendous asset she has been with us. Sinead, thank you. And to keep it in the family, and I know Sinead is a bit more mature years, not as old as some of us, but her daughter here, Denise. Now, I think Denise's portrayal of Ellen Courtney was fabulous, even if she was dealing in a rogue like him. So that was that. And then my next person to come along is Michael Del Punta. Some of you have a good memory. You can go back to when he was the singing waiter. Was that correct? In Capri Bay. Now, I'll come to you last, Reg. I'm coming down this way now. I'm coming back to Tom. Anyway, did this woman have you crying? Yeah. Anne O'Brien, that's what you're supposed to do, and you did it. Great. Not an easy role to be the widow of this poor young man here. This man, we've been on the stage quite a lot, and we're good friends. And was he a powerful Michael Collins? Yeah. Now, as your little theatre is trying to grow, we've been very fortunate over the last few years, like with Sinead joining us. But our latest edition was Karen, Desmond, and Tony. This is Karen. So you don't get much of an opportunity to say these things, so I'm going to take it. If you look at this thing on the back of there, if you can only stand back and you could see it, and all the artwork was done by Karen, and she created that. And when we pushed the boat out, that's an exact replica of the harp in Green Street Courthouse. And now I've gone along. Oh, yes. Oh, and the picture of Robert Emmett downstairs that you saw coming in. Again, Karen did that. So that brings me.
Take your hand off me, sir.
Tom and I met first back in, I think it was around 2005, Tom, up in the golf club, and I knew instantly, you are so full of charisma and shit. Excuse the language. Excuse the language. Oh, sorry, yeah. Has she recovered from that leg injury you gave her? Yeah. Anyway, Tom is just a pure natural. I could sense it straight away. Again, full of fun. And if you listen to him on CRY, he's nearly got as many listeners as me. Is that good? 5. Jimmy Flanagan down there has 6, is it, Jim? Yeah. Oh, 1,500. Anyway, Tom, it's been great to work with you. And the rapport you built with Reg was just magic.
And before I go, Ulster says no!
I'd have to say, I don't know what to say about my wife, because we've soldiered together since 1968. We often danced out in that middle of the dance floor when you were giving me the eyes. And as Mr. O'Connell said, I succumbed. Anyway. And here I am, how many years later? 54 years later, anyway, and great fun, and I can't thank you enough. Then that means to the 2 main men. I'll end with Reg, but I've soldiered with this man. This man is gifted, as you can tell. He's gifted at learning his lines, and that was not an easy role to play, because he fell asleep a couple of times. No, concentration has to be high, but he's the magician for learning lines in our group, and he puts pressure on us by learning the lines when we haven't learned them. But you can see he's a consummate actor, and he's a very good friend. So thank you, Paul. Where's that man? Reg, come out here.
let me go back to sleep.
I want to finish with this man.
Yes, sir.
This gifted man. I got to know him a good few years ago. I got stuck with you on a train back from Dublin.
Biggest mistake I ever made.
And we just gelled in terms of humour and hopefully a carefree attitude to important things. But anyway, Reg, you deserve so much praise. And
Can I take my hat off?
You can.
See, Brendan Bean had a good crop of hair.
Anyway, Reg, would you like to just say a few words and we can end the night?
Jesus, I'll tell you what, there's not much room after you. Look, there's just one person I want to, that hasn't been mentioned so far. That's Paul on sound.
Of course, yes.
I think I've been at rehearsals and I see the value of what Paul has done. It's been superb that he got the clear sound out to everybody.
Yes, true.
And I think it's been a major contribution to getting this done. Now, Jimmy, it's only a little over 2 years ago that I got involved with Youghal Little Theatre,
yes,
then
true.
starting writing, and you took a shine to the Epitaph from day one, and you wanted to do all kinds of things with it. But eventually, you've got your way.
Yes.
And it's here. And it wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. And it wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this great cast that are here and have given enthusiastic support for it and made very useful contributions. So give them all a round of applause because they made a big contribution to this. And now can I go home?
You can go home now if you give us one more verse of the old triangle.
Ah, Jesus.
Lead us out for one verse.
The old triangle.
If the citizens will join in, that is.
A hungry feeling came o'er me stealing, and the mice they were squealing in my prison cell.
Everybody.
And the old triangle went jingle jangle all along the banks of the Royal Canal, all along the banks of the Royal Canal. Have ye no homes to go to?